Welcome to this week's Halacha Shir. The title of the Shir is Going Away for Shabbos Chanukah. We are now, Baruch Hashem, in the midst of Chanukah, a wonderful time of year, and it's an opportune time to discuss these halachas of an achsanoi, a guest, and going away for Shabbos Chanukah, how to deal with that in terms of lighting the menorah and related halachas. So if you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. The Shulchan Aruch says in Hilchas Chanukah in Siman Tov Reish Ayin Zayin Seif Aleph, Achsanoi she'ein madlikin alav b'beisoi. A guest who is not at home, he's away. Tzarich loses peruta lebalabayis lishtatif imoy b'shemen shel ner Chanukah. He should contribute financially to the oil that the balabayis, the person who is staying at, when he lights the menorah, he should contribute to the balabayis' lighting. Now, this machaba needs to be understood in the context of a famous machlekes between the machaba and the Ramah, which in turn is a machlekes rishonim regarding how many candles you light. Because if you take a look at the next box, the machaba says in Tov Reish Ayin Aleph Sif Beis, Kama neris madlik. How many menorahs do you actually light? So B'layla Harishon. Sorry, how many candles do you light? So B'layla Harishon madlik echad, you light one. Mikan ve'elech mosif v'hoilech echad b'chol layla. You carry on increasing one by one, 2 on day 2, 3 on day 3, 8 on day 8. Ad she'b'leil achron yesh shmoina. And even if there are many people in the home, you only have one menorah. Says the Ramah, the Ramah famously goes like the Rambam, who says that every person in the house would light, and that is the Pasha to Minuk, says the Ramah, for the Bnei Ashkenaz. However, he qualifies it and says, but the Ramah does say that you should try and distance the menorah, or position them in such a way so that it's the passerby will be clear how many nights of Chanukah it is, how many menorahs there are. So that's the famous machlekes between the Machaba and the Ramah, which is in turn, like I said, machlekes Rambam Tosfos, how many candles and how many menorahs you actually have. So the Machaba is consistent with his view that there is one menorah per household, and therefore the guest should include himself. Either you give a small amount of money to be included, or you actually give some oil, and that's what the Mishnah Berurah is going on. Unless it's pruta hainu she'ein tzorech achsanai litin kol chatzia tzois haneres rak, but pruta saki, he doesn't need to give half the value of the oil and the wicks, but just a small amount of pruta is sufficient. And therefore he has a share in the oil. And so too, if he hasn't got the half a dollar, the 50p or whatever it may be, to give him, alternatively the balabayas can actually be makna the shemen to him, a pruta's worth of shemen, b'matona as a gift, and therefore he's mishtatif b'pruta. Okay, now, so that is therefore when the Shulchan Aruch says achsanai can contribute. That's the Machaba consistent with his view that you light one menorah per household. However, the Ramah would be of the opinion that every single person lights, and therefore the Mishnah Berurah finishes off and says, better if the achsanoi should light himself, and there's discussion whether or not he makes a bracha, but the contemporary practice seems to be that he would, and he does make a bracha. But if he wants to be mishtatif with the achsanoi, he's with the balabayas, then he's welcome to do so. Now, let's talk about. So with regard to the bracha, the Mishnah Berurah says not to make it if this, for example, his family is lighting a home. The Mishnah Berurah would say not to make the bracha if his family have already lit. Other achronim argue, and the practice seems to be that he does light and does make a bracha. But if he is a Sephardi, then he would actually just be mishtatif with the lighting of the one menorah in his host's house. Okay, now going to in-laws for Shabbos Chanukah. Again, a very common scenario all over the world, and particularly in Eretz Yisrael. What is the story there? So, what's clear is that if you're staying there, then you light there. You've moved in there for the whole of Shabbos, so therefore, Erev Shabbos, you're staying there, you light there. There is discussion about what happens on Motzei Shabbos. So ordinarily you're going to be, you're there for Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos, you'll travel back, you'll travel home. So where do you light on Motzei Shabbos? So that is a machlekes. The Dirush Mishnah Berurah notes in this sif in in Tov Reish Ayin Zayin, they bring a machlekas. Shlomo Zalman and Rabbi Elyashiv both say that you light where you were for Shabbos. So therefore, Motzei Shabbos, you've been staying at your in-laws, you lit there Erev Shabbos, you light there as well on Motzei Shabbos. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman says you should try and stay there for 30 minutes. Rabbi Elyashiv says you can leave immediately after lighting. But both are of the opinion that you light where you were for Shabbos. However, the Dirshu notes bring the Chazon Ish, Ravadia, and others that it's better to light at home. So there are different opinions about what one does regarding Motzei Shabbos. Now, that's if you are moving in and you stay with the in-laws. But what about if you're eating at your in-laws, for example, but you're sleeping at the neighbors? There isn't room in your in-laws' house or apartment, and therefore you're sleeping elsewhere. What to do in that situation? So the Shulchan Aruch seems to be of the opinion that it's best to light where you sleep. He's worried about Mishmar Sayin, and people you see that you slept there and you haven't lit there, it's chashad, and therefore it's best to light where you sleep. However, the Ramah says that it's better to light where you eat, since nowadays anyway we generally light indoors, and the Mokum Achiloso is the Ikka, is the Lashon of the Mishnah Berurah, and therefore the Ramah would say that you actually light where you're going to eat, and since you're going to eat with your in-laws, then you can light there, but the Shulchan Aruch seems to say you should light where you sleep. If, however, you arrive on Erev Shabbos and you haven't eaten yet, and you sort of just drop your bags down, and then you go straight to the in-laws, then if you haven't eaten yet, then it would be better. You haven't sort of been koveya in terms of eating, and therefore better to light where you are sleeping, because that's going to be your primary residence because you haven't eaten yet. Okay, now a couple of other points. Chanukah parties, and this is sometimes people are not always aware of this, but the Mishnah Berurah says very clearly, if you look at paragraph 3, Misha Soyed Etzel Chaveiro, if you're going out to eat over Chanukah with some friends, Ba'akroy, it's like a one-off, you're just guests on that particular evening, and you live in that town, you're just going to visit friends, you've got to go home and light. You can't just light wherever the Chanukah party is. And if you don't want to leave the place where you're visiting, you're having a good time, then instruct whoever's at home to light for you. But it's of course preferred that you do it yourself and you get up and go back to where you live and then light there. And the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says the same thing in Simon. I think it's it's Kuf Lamed Tes, I think. Misha hu be'iroi, if someone is at home in his living, sort of his local, but he just happens to be in somebody else's home, so he should go home and light there. So a guest who is just invited for a meal or for a Chanukah party should light at home in his own home. And that's a very common occurrence over Chanukah. You're invited out and you should really light in your own home. Enjoy the candles, bask by the physical and spiritual glow of the candles, and then go to the Chanukah party or go for the meal or whatever it may be. Now, regarding yeshiva bachrim, I guess they are also, in a way, guests of the Rosh Yeshiva, whoever owns the yeshiva, and there are different customs regarding yeshiva bachrim, how they light. The Chazon Ish, in other words, where they light. The Chazon Ish is reported as paskening that yeshiva bachrim should light in the yeshiva dining room. However, other poskim say that they should light in the dormitories where they sleep, either at the entrance to the dorm or in the bedroom, rather than in the yeshiva dining room. Rav Moshe says that, I've got the Mareh Makomis there. Rav Moshe adds that one of the bachrim should stay and watch the flames the entire time, just for fire safety reasons, and all those who share the room can light at the window. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman also says it's better to light in the yeshiva dormitory, either by the window in a bedroom or by the entrance of the dorm building. If you cannot light in the yeshiva dormitory for whatever reason, for example, a fire hazard and the hanhola don't allow it, then you should light in the dining room. So different customs regarding where yeshiva bachrim light. Lastly, business travel. So I've got at the end there the following. A father who is away on business for part of Chanukah should be included in the lighting of his wife or adult son who is at home. However, the widespread minhag is for the person himself to light at the place where he is sleeping. it's quite easy to take a little small menorah, some candle lights, some tea candles or something like that, and to light wherever he happens to be. And there's different discussions about what to do in that situation about making a bracha. Some say that he only makes a bracha if he lights earlier than the menorah that is lit in his home, or if he specifically had in mind not to be exempted by the lighting at his home. That's what the Mishnah Berurah seems to say. Rav Moshe says you can always make the bracha, as we assume that by the fact that he's lighting, he's intending to fulfill his own mitzvah personally. So just to summarize, what have we said? That regarding guests, the Shulchan Aruch says that he should be mishtatef with his host, and that's the mechaber consistent with his view that there's one menorah per household. The Ramah, of course, says Ashkenazim light according to the number of people there are in the house, and if there are many people, then each one would light, and therefore in Ashkenazi circles it would be more prevalent that the guest would light his own menorah. If he wants to be yotze with the host, then he's entitled to do so. And again, he gives a bit of money, he gives a pruta towards the cost of the menorah, of the oil, or he can be makne, the balabayas can be makne that oil, a pruta worth of oil to him. Regarding making a bracha, although the Mishnah Berurah says, according to the mechaber, not to make a bracha, certainly if his family would have already lit, other achronim argue and say that in the case of the Ramah, he should make his own bracha where he's lighting himself. Going to in-laws for Shabbos Chanukah, so if you stay there, you light there, no problem. Regarding that's Erev Shabbos and Motzei Shabbos, if you're traveling back home, so then there's a discussion where you light. Like I said, that Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, Rabbi Elyashiv said to light where you were for Shabbos, so light a second time at your in-laws' house. However, the Chazon Ish Rabbi says it's better to light at home. If you're eating in the in-laws but sleeping at neighbors, so then the Shulchan Aruch said it's best to light where you sleep. The Ramah says better to light where you eat because, like the Mishnah Berurah says, Mokum Achiloso is Ikka. However, if you arrive early on Erev Shabbos and you haven't yet eaten, then it's better to light. You haven't eaten anything there. You just literally arrived 5 minutes before Shabbos. Then better to light where you are sleeping. Chanukah parties, the guest who's just invited for a meal or for a Chanukah party should light at his own home. And Yeshiva Bachram, there are different customs, whether they light in the Yeshiva dormitory or whether they light in the dining room. Everyone should follow whatever the Yeshiva practice is. And again, business travel, the standard practice nowadays is that a person is away on business, that they'll light back at home, and he will light, or whoever's traveling will light where they are on travels. And Rav Moshe says that he normally assumed that he intends to fulfill his own mitzvah, and therefore he would make a bracha when he does so.